Hi, everyone. Today we're talking about WheeshtE by Kate Davies. The book is about creative making in uncertain times. And I'm Valerie, and I'm here with Linda Jennings from Color Storm Yarns. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you, Valerie. It's I'm feeling happy that we're still talking about the chapter mess up because the whole idea of improvising and with that being sometimes successful and sometimes not successful, I'm right with that.
Yeah, it's really interesting because um, for everyone participating, we sort of got out of order. We had a vacation and sort of lost our bookmark in the book. And so we did one episode of the new chapter, and now we're backtracking and going back to mess up. But for me, that feels very on brand, and like we're demonstrating that this is possible. And just because we had an idea doesn't mean that we can't change it midstream. So we're going to talk about messing up today.
Yeah, totally. The older I get, the more I realize that perfection is not the secret to life.
That's a word that I struggle with, and I've done a lot of deep personal growth work around that idea, and it's something that I think about every single day,
Mm, mm.
for sure.
I hear you. Here's another example of mess up. I've got some wet yarn on my legs. And you can see this is a yarn dyed with madder root that I just took out of my washing machine to spin dry it to take all the excess moisture out of it. And the reason it looks so tangly is because in the dye process, I accidentally did 3 times what you're not supposed to do. I let the water boil. And it's okay. It took 3 tries to get the yarn this kind of rust color, which is what I was looking for. Normally, it doesn't take 3 boils, 3 simmers, 3 heat ups. I need to find a verb for that because it's not supposed to boil. It's not even supposed to simmer. Um, but so I messed up and the yarn still came out beautifully. So again, it's I knew at least not to agitate the yarn. I just turned the heat off and the yarn didn't mind too much.
It's so interesting because, from what I understand, our raw material wool reacts to heat, the temperature, and the pH, whether it's super acidic or super basic. And then, like, the chemicals add up an element of, you're using natural chemicals, which is like an X factor. And to your point, like, you may have a recipe and you look at that result and it's not what you want, or the result you got last time, right? Like maybe it's a different season or a different year, or
Yeah,
it's just really interesting to me that, we're trying to put this natural process in a box, and that may or may not work every time.
yeah, that is part of the fun for probably all dyers, not just natural dyers, but surprising mistakes that happen that end up coming out very nicely. I once put in some cochineal, which is normally like a pink color, and logwood, which gives a purple color. And I forgot to mix it before I put the yarn in. I was kind of going for what I call my pansy purple, an in between purple and pink color. So the happy result was that I had purple and pink in different places on the yarn. It gave me a multi color in just one step. That was really fun. I've never been able to repeat it, but it was fun that one time. I had like four or five hanks that were this amazing color. And then I just added some yellow and orange to it and just had a wonderful. um, multicolor yarn that I called Blumen, which is the German word for flower.
Oh,
I had just been in
wow.
Switzerland. All right, so it's a Swiss word, I guess. I just been in Switzerland and I wanted to create a flower color and I had no idea that it was going to come out that well.
Wow. That is so cool. You know, I think about like Brene Brown and all of her beautiful work and what she shares with the world. That sort of her niche is the imperfection and the gifts that you get from imperfection. But she's an academic and she's got like all of these degrees and does all of this very deep analytical study. So I believe what she says, but it's at a very high level. And so I have to bring it down to something that I can understand, that I can touch, taste, and feel, that I can experience. And sometimes just naming a mistake as my imperfection practice
Mm,
helps me.
mm.
And I notice the perfectionism coming up, especially in my knitting, because I feel like there's a written pattern and I have to do it exactly as written. And that's the result that I want and desire. And so anytime that I perceived that I made a mistake, sometimes it's hard to move forward, and that creates barriers for
Oh,
me to finish a project.
so you name the mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Is it usually a nice name or purposely a bad, kind of a negative connotation name?
Well, I'll literally say I made a mistake and I'm keeping it as part of my imperfection practice.
Oh, I see. It doesn't have a name. You're just speaking the words and giving yourself permission to accept it into
Mhm.
the finished product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because maybe you know a knitter or have experienced this yourself when somebody's doing their sweater, their project, and they're like, I made a mistake and I can't move forward.
Mhm.
And like the act of fixing the mistake creates a bigger mess than the original mistake.
Yes, I've certainly had that happen.
And then what, right? Like it's a brain exercise, and like,
Rip it, rip it, rip it.
yeah, it's awful
Mhm.
to get stuck in that loop. And for me, once I tip it off and identify the mistake, I have to work very hard to deliberately not fix the mistake
Okay. Yeah,
and
certainly.
accept it. Like,
Yeah. I feel like that's part of the skill in knitting is knowing when you can let it go. Because sometimes our mistakes really are trivial and not even we will notice it by the time we're done. And other times it really does have to be fixed, right? And only an experienced knitter can know that. And with your growing experience, you're gaining that knowledge and you're making that decision in an objective, skillful way.
yeah, I mean, like I'm thinking about things that we've experienced in our knitting group where someone was showing their project. It was a yoked short row sweater and they got off on their short row count. And so they had a sleeve in the middle of the chest
Yeah.
and a sleeve at the side. And like, obviously that's not a wearable garment. And if your desired result is a sweater with two sleeves in the right place, like you gotta
Yeah.
rip back and fix it. But like that is, the opposite of what I'm talking about.
Okay. Sure.
The one missed stitch count, or I didn't get a yarn over, or like the
Yeah.
little tiny things that create barriers in my work.
I hear you. I I listened to the poem 13 Ways to Look at a Blackbird. And I
Mm,
encourage you all, if you want to read that poem, go ahead and find the YouTube version where the author is reading it.
Mm,
Wallace Stephen. He has a lovely, deep voice, and
mm,
it's so much deeper than I thought it was going to be. Like the assignment is to write thir- your own 13 views of looking at something familiar. And
mhm.
all I just wrote like 1 through 13 on a list because I wanted to keep it short for myself. I didn't want to be intimidated by having to write like a whole sentence. And especially after I heard his poem, it was incredible. I'm like, okay, I'm not even going to try to do something similar to that. I'm just going to do a simpler version of his poem. And I only wrote, a few words for each of my 13 descriptions.
I love a bullet list.
Yeah, it's only like 2.5 minutes to listen to that poem. It's really worth it.
Oh, that's so nice. So the other thing, I taught some new students how to crochet for the first time
Wow.
over the weekend. And this concept or aspect of perfection even comes up in students that I work with. And it really bothers me
Hmm. Tell me
that
about
as
it.
a that as a society we don't have space for learning a new skill. I mean, if you think about something that you've never done before in your entire life, you're not going to be good at it. And the only way that we get good at it is by experiencing, using the tool, doing the actions, looking at the result, like in just the most basic way. The only way that we learn and improve is through experience.
So
But
you
so
felt
many,
like these students and many students you've come across are not comfortable with that learning process. They want to do it right away.
yeah, they want it perfect the first time. And they're like, this looks messed up. And what do I do to fix it? And like it's this fine knife edge of like they're identifying what they see, which is an important skill, but then we have to continue to improve. And so sometimes I watch frustration happen because everybody wants to be, perfect size stitches, consistent work, all of these things that just take time. And in the first hour you've done something in your entire life, you're not there yet. And how do we just soften that idea or like encourage the experimentation and the trying and celebrate the fact that we've done something brand new that we've never done before, and like that is the success on that day at that moment.
I feel like that's very much in line with the theme of this chapter. Being willing to try something new, being willing to mess up, being willing to not do it well, being willing to persevere to gain the skills you need to have it come out halfway decent. It's good for your brain.
It's
It's good for
so
our
good for the
growth and
brain.
humility, it's I mean, I think humility is one of the most important characters in a person's walk in through life, and trying new stuff really builds humility.
Yeah, I mean, it builds all of the hot management buzzwords that everyone's trying to do or get, like resiliency, determination, stick to itiveness, like finish what you start, all of the, think creatively, all of these like business tools, TM, right?
Yeah, like when you Google something for an image, like I was making a birthday cake this past weekend for my son's birthday, and he loves game boards. So I wanted some inspiration on how to make a game board birthday cake. Um, and what I got were things obviously done, over many, many more hours than I wanted to put into this cake, and by a lot more skill than I had. And I just I got an idea and decided, okay, that's fine. I'm just going to do this very, very simple idea. Thank you, Google, for the inspiration, but I no way, shape am I going to try to copy any of that. So maybe, it's hard for some people. It's hard. It is something you have to step away from because there's a lot of perfection out there, and I think that's why sometimes you come across someone who is willing to write about something they're learning. Like there was a magazine, a knitting magazine I read for a while, for a few years. My favorite author in the magazine was a man who was learning to knit, and each article was about what he had learned that week and what he was struggling with. And he had such a fun way of writing, and he was such a humble guy. I really enjoyed seeing knitting through his eyes. But I think it's rare, right, to come across someone who's willing to write about something as they're learning it.
Yeah, we don't talk about the difficulties and the challenges of the learning process. And look, we've all had teachers that are very flippant and just do it. But like, if you don't know how to do it, or like, that's a struggle. And we don't show sort of that underbelly of trying something new in popular culture.
Okay.
We put the image on Google of the perfect cake, but we don't show the failures, and we don't show, and when we do, it's made out of this like really what feels mean-hearted to me jokey way, like epic fail, or like there's just this like taste of negativity or like snarkiness
Okay.
to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking about this too much.
Well, I think you're saying that is perhaps predominant, and I'm saying that the more healthy versions are out there, but you have to look for them. And so I'm
Yeah.
very encouraging you to look for them, encouraging each other to keep learning new things and being willing to mess up because it's good for our brains, it's good for humility, it's good for your friendships. It's
Well, leaning into a new skill, like it's so important, and it can be fun, but there's always a learning curve.
okay. I'll try to
I
remember
don't know.
that. I'll try.
Okay. We're gonna practice our imperfection today.
Yes, yes. We're trying to continue to be creative and
Mhm.
let our creativity perhaps produce ugly things as well as beautiful things. And I hope you have fun with that too this coming week.
All
Take care
right.
now.
Bye,
Bye
everyone.
bye.